Welcome to the first ever Discord live stream on a Monday. This is October 23rd, 2023. I am recording this separately so I can create a link to it for you, and you'll be able to see it if you didn't make it live. But my hope is that y'all will be able to watch these live. But this is when I can do them and keep you having private content, private time, private videos just for me that I don't have to put in a membership thing on either Locals or YouTube. I'll store them. I'll store the recordings at YouTube as private shows so that only you guys get them. But they'll be accessible here to those of you who are Logician members or above. And also they'll be visible to my YouTube members, because why not let them have that too? There are still a few people over there who are members. So in any event, welcome. Today's topic, homeschooling, public school refugees, what to do when you can do more with a child who expects less from themselves. Here's what I mean by that. If kids have been in public school, let's say longer than elementary school, so it's some part of K through 5, they've been in it. The chances, I would say, are near 100%. Obviously, there are outliers. There are people who are just born expecting a lot from themselves, who understand the concept of taking an education, that an education is not something you're given, it's something you take. But it is a rare kid that is like that. Generally speaking, they're gifted or profoundly gifted, and you're pretty much in their way on a daily basis. So you'll know if you have one of those kids. For the vast majority, though, it is not the case. They are taught early and often to only do what they're told, not a bit more, because there's no reward to it. Kids are very quick to pick up on what will benefit them and contribute to their survival and comfort and what will not. And so they will do only that which is expected. And in public school, very, very little is expected. Do as you're told. Do exactly as you're told. Follow directions exactly as they're given, and not a bit more. They're also taught currently in schools that the purpose of education is soft and squishy. It's liberation from a past they know nothing about, but they're told is terrible. It is liberation from, horrible ideas they're told exist and dominate our society that don't. And they are dissuaded from having a kind of positive curiosity, creative and builder's curiosity, and are trained at an early age to have a critic's curiosity, a critical consciousness, a consciousness that looks at material and says, what is wrong here? Let me find the problematic elements of whatever it is I'm looking at. So even when they do encounter history, or they do encounter literature, or they do encounter science, even math, increasingly, they're taught to critique it or find what's wrong with it, which ultimately devalues the subject matter itself. The student is not arriving at these subjects understanding how they can be applied to the good and the beautiful, but instead how they can be applied to decolonization and the tearing down of the old order and building up of the new, which of course they're never really introduced to because it doesn't exist and nobody articulates boundaries for it. They're just told that if it's not what was there, it's better. So they have every incentive to tear things down or denigrate things or devalue things, and absolutely no understanding of why something would matter, how things work. And what ends up happening, because they are children, is they take what is already a childlike tendency to view the world as static, to view the world like whatever they have will continue to be. They don't know where food comes from. They don't know how things work. They don't know what happens when you plug something into a socket, where the power comes from. They're just told that the generation of it is bad, but they don't understand how it's made. They don't understand what resources are. They don't understand what infrastructure is. They don't understand what human ingenuity, invention, and labor produces. So when you pull them out, and mind you, if they were an A student in school, that means they learned those lessons really, really well. They learned very well how to critique things. They learned very well how to do what their teacher told them to do. And I say and or because some of them weren't that great at following directions, but they learned just by listening that I should be very angry all the time. So, and okay, there's another group who learned how to follow directions very well and didn't pay a whole lot of attention to all those messages, but they don't know anything else. So they're just kind of like apathetic. So they're not necessarily A students because they have so perfectly internalized the critical theory messages of, destroy the olds and allow something utopian to grow in its place. They just followed directions and repeated it like little parrots what they were told, and they were kind of like little useful idiots. And I'm not saying that to be mean to your kids. I'm just saying they don't have their own thoughts that don't come to them from whatever was I had to say to pass the test, get along in class, whatever. Either way, you could have an honor student, A student, a very good student, a student who, was doing okay in school, that you decide, I'm done because I don't think they're doing okay, or I don't like these messages, or I don't like what's happening to them psychologically. They're anxious all the time, or they're getting bullied, or they're sassing me constantly, and I'm seeing some very bad signs. I'm getting them out of there. Whatever the reason is, even if your kid was an A student, you're going to have special considerations. Then there's another group of students, and you're going to have to decide. You're going to have to do some kind of diagnostic to figure this out. There are students who were not good in school, who were getting in trouble, fair amount, who were, pushing back, arguing, not making friends, whatever, but like things were trouble, and you decide to pull them out. Don't automatically assume that it was bad trouble. I know it sounds contradictory. No, obviously if they're violent, that's not good. You need to do some work there. If it was, they were goofing off constantly and cutting class, okay, that's a problem. But see if you can get to the bottom of why they did that and cope with the thing that really is wrong. So and the reason I say that, certain number of them are, genuinely troubled and have other issues, and you're going to have to deal with that outside of their academic situation. And a certain percentage of them are rebellious and frustrated because they instinctively know what the teachers were doing was bupkis. They instinctively know they're not learning what they need to know. Some of them are even gifted, and they just won't play ball. But they don't have the vocabulary or maturity to express that. And so you may have to have a conversation with them. Ironically, you may have an easier time with those kids than with the A students. And the reason ought to be obvious. You've pulled them out of school, they were doing well. Unless they ask to be pulled out, they're like, why are you taking me out? I was an A student, I was an honor student, or I was getting high Bs, or I had a lot of friends, or da da da. Now, you may not have liked where it was going. They may have been, talking about different pronouns and, America sucks. And, who knows what reason you had for saying, we're done here. We're done. But recognize they might be pretty mad at you. And you trying to do more or teach them real civics or real history or real science or real math, you're not only dealing with the hurdle of, holy crap, my kid was an A student in math and they can't even do long division, or they don't understand how to calculate the percentage of anything. Very real problem, by the way. But I've got a kid who has no inclination to listen to me that they need to learn that stuff because they're going to say, I learned that 3 years ago. Really? How come you can't do it? Well, I didn't need to do it for school, but you need to do it for life. Why? Why do I? Those are questions you're going to have to answer. So it's not so simple. So I'm sitting here telling you, get them out, get them out, get them out. And you should. But I don't want to lead you down the primrose path. If you have one of those kids, you're in for it. It's going to be a challenge. And so I'm here to try to help you with that. If you have one of the kids who was like a little rebel and you find out that it was because they were frustrated, they wanted to learn, congratulations, you're going to have the easiest time. They probably do expect more from their school, expect more for themselves, and you can go about the process of deschooling just as a matter of, let's deschool. If you're not sure what that is, deschooling is a period of time where they don't do anything academic. They kind of actually get out of those habits. I don't mean the habit of getting up in the morning. They still get up in the morning. They still join the human race, but maybe they do some chores around the house. Maybe they read a book for pleasure. Just get them in the habit of just reading again, just for pleasure, you don't let them do nothing, but you don't make it about school. You don't recreate school at home. You first get them into the mode of they own their learning, that education is something they take for them. What would you like to do today that involves learning something new? Like, you can steer them, you can guide them, but it's still not school. Make sure they get plenty of fresh air, eat well, they decompress, they get out of that mindset. And it, generally speaking, can take as long as a month for every year they were in school. And you might be like, I'm not letting my kid have, 8 months off of doing nothing. Well, if they've been in school for 8 years, then they should be spending their time probably, I don't know, like reading books all day, or doing household chores and reading books, or doing household chores, reading books, and going for walks with you or something, or pick a topic to learn and learn it, even if it's robotics, if it's cooking, if it's whatever it is. But it's not just sit around the house and play video games, okay? But it's still deschooling them. And then you tell them, okay, so we're going to start now that you've kind of and the more you get them out in the world with you, the more this deschooling involves them being involved in make the grocery list, go shopping with me, help me figure this out. So they're doing real world stuff during that time period. If they're a little older and they get a job and they spend more of their time working than doing anything academic, then you start talking about, all right, now in order to make sure you can graduate from high school or anything resembling high school to go on to have a high school diploma. So you're kind of holding them a little bit hostage. Like, you're not going to get a high school diploma from me unless and until you do, these things. But you still need to deschool them. It's just going to be easier after that. Then you can go on and do the learning. While we're on the subject of deschooling and high school diplomas, every state has different laws. You're going to have to check yours as far as attendance goes. Push that envelope as hard as you can. Yes, I said it. Push it as hard as you can. Even if you're deschooling, it's an attendance day. They showed up. You were supervising them. You'll make up the hours of coursework later. Don't worry about it. No one's going to come literally and check. They're going to have your kid take some standardized tests in the end. But considering the fact that, kids who don't read are graduating high school from the public school, I wouldn't be too exercised about how closely they're going to monitor what you're doing. So don't obsess over what the state's going to want from you. You do you. Do what you need to do for your kid and worry about the rest later. They're not going to literally come to your door. Okay? So then for the other kids, the vast majority, the ones who did pretty well, maybe, but you're not happy. Their grades were inflated. They became lazy. They lost their curiosity. They didn't rebel. They were like, whatever, mom. They're either apathetic or they were all bought in. You have to do deschooling, but then your deschooling activities need to be more structured in the sense that you can't feed into their perception that nothing matters. None of this ever mattered. It was a big, waste of time and parents are idiots. You have to really come up with a plan of action that gets them out in the world and answering certain questions and doing certain things quickly to begin to challenge all of the narratives they've been taught. I've been thinking about putting together a curriculum to help you do exactly that. And I'm over the next couple of months, I'm going to be trying to put something on paper about it. I might even have to write a book. I don't know. But essentially, you'll have to take the core premises of critical theory. You will have to spend time on each one, challenging your child to defend them. And they won't be able to. And they'll try. They'll spit back out at you some crap that their teachers taught them. And then you can say, okay, let's figure it out. Let's find out if you're right. And then you'll have to put something together. And this is why I want to help you. You'll have to put something together to help them figure out that, that history you were taught, that, the natural state of man is to live in peace and harmony with all their neighbors. Everything is complete bullshit. And here's the proof. And you bring forth some history and you can show them proof from a lot of different angles. You can show them proof as it's found in, historical documents. You can show them proof as it's found in artwork from different empires. And you can show them how, look at this. Here's art from, ancient Greece and Rome. And then here's art from hundreds of years later, even thousands of years later, that is more primitive and weird looking and less realistic. How did that happen? People always get better. human nature is perfectible. How does that work? You can explore human nature. You can look into things about, psychology and science and so on, and look at different people from different parts of the world and start talking about that. You can teach philosophy. You can ask them to articulate what their core beliefs are. What do you believe and why do you believe it? And you just spend a whole week on that. So your job, your deschooling job is going to be more one of, all right, you're not doing like academic work the way it used to look, but what we're going to do is we're going to go back and to get you ready for doing school to graduate and get a diploma. We're going to talk about learning. We're going to talk about why we do it. What's the point of it? And they'll probably go, to make the world a better place, blah, 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 blah. And you'll be like, all right, let's go there. Like, don't argue. Just take what they say as a jumping off point for challenging them to prove you wrong when you say, I disagree. It's be the first time they'll be like, you're my parent. Of course you disagree. All right, well, prove me wrong. If you can prove me wrong using information that you find, et cetera, and my information doesn't match up and you don't end up, shifting your viewpoint a little bit, that's fine. But you got to do some work to prove it to me. I'm not just going to take your word for it, because I have been alive longer than you and I've read different things than you, and I've read things you haven't read. I've seen things you haven't seen. I've been places you haven't been. I've done things you haven't done. Just me. If you must say my lived experience tells me you're wrong, what are they going to do? So you're going to have to do a course of study like that. And yes, it could take 1 month for every year they were in school to break down these false premises and get them to go, huh? And before you think, oh God, Deb, this sounds so daunting. Can't I just keep feeding them some mediocre math and science and keep them away from the bad woke ideas and everything will be fine? No, you can't. That's not an education. That's just kind of warehousing your kid until they're 18 and then kicking them out the door completely ill-prepared to deal with reality. The point here is to reacquaint your child with the reality they once upon a time were eager to learn about before they went to school, and then they spent however many months or years being told reality doesn't matter. All that matters is our dreams and our ideals and our goals of a better world, a sustainable world where everybody gets along. They were told that's what mattered, not what is. In fact, be very angry at what is, be very skeptical about what is, be very, very, very critical of what is. So have to persuade your child that what is. There's no escaping it. There's no amount of virtue that will protect you from it. That the only thing we do equitably is die. And that coming to grips with accepting and even appreciating and cherishing certain aspects of reality is how we live a happy, good life. In fact, how we live a life that has a lot less anxiety in it than it otherwise would, because the problem with reality is it's always there, reminding you that it's there. And if you keep telling yourself it's not there, you get increasingly frustrated with it every time it asserts itself. And that creates a lot of cognitive dissonance, cognitive distortion, and anxiety, which can push you all the way over the edge into a kind of psychosis. So you can't tell, I wouldn't say you can't, it's probably ill-advised to tell your kid how this progression works, but you can make it clear to them that if they keep fighting this and keep saying, no, it doesn't need to be this way, you can say, okay, tell me how. Tell me how it doesn't need to be this way. And it's not a question of need. It just is. It just is. And they won't be able to. And you say, well, look, here's the deal. Is it you need to be able to tell me that. You can't just say it and it's true. You have to demonstrate why it's true. How do you know that it can be better? What information gives you that? Why do you think that? When has it ever been? Let's go look. Let's look at history. Let's see what happened. Was it ever the way you describe? Has it ever been not even quite as good as it now? And then it got way worse? Yeah. So it can be worse. The first thing you've got to convince your children of, if they're refugees from public school, is things can be a lot worse than they are. A lot worse. That is the fundamental belief they are lacking. They think things are awful right now. Terrible. Worst they've ever been. Worse than, I mean, as bad as the Civil War. Like, they believe this. Why? Because they don't know anything about the Civil War. They don't know anything about war, period. They don't know anything about any of that. They're just told this high level, there were slaves. There was a Civil War. White people bad. Moving on. They don't really learn it. You might say, well, my kid learned about the Civil War. And yes, they were given a bunch of facts that they repeated back on a page. Do you think they really thought about it? Do you think anyone sat with them and said, let's look at this? Like, compare the North to the South. Let's just compare the North to the South in terms of their level of development, technological development, development in terms of how they use labor, how they functioned economically. You think they ever had any of these conversations? No. North and South were just this, two places that fought with each other, and the North won, the alleged good guys won, and then there were no slavery anymore. But they weren't really very good because they were still mostly white. So that's about where they come out with it. They wanted slaves. They didn't want slaves. End of story. Then they learn a lot about the plight and the oppression of slaves. But they never really learned about why was the South so attached to slavery. They just hate black people? Or did they invent hatred of black people because they needed slavery so much or thought they did? Right? So these are conversations they've never had. These are conversations you can have with them. So the gist of what I'm telling you is that you can do more with them. They expect less of themselves because no one's ever tried to do more with them. But you have to first go after their philosophy. You have to first challenge their belief system in non-academic ways together, even if you just do it each day, like for an hour at a time. You have to put together an outline of things that, that's why starting off with, like, tell me what you believe about the world. Now that you've gone to school for this long, what do you think of the world? Is it basically good or basically bad? Is it a mixture of both? Why? Why not? Just do that. Start there. And then you'll get, it's like, well, okay, what makes you say it's good? What makes you say it's bad? Write that down. And just pull out of them what they know about, what they know that feeds their beliefs, what they believe, why they believe it. And then you can ask them, like, have you ever thought about the possibility that you might be wrong? And if they probably haven't. And you say, okay, like, well, what if I said you were wrong? See what they say. They say, well, that's not possible because I'm a teacher and you're not a teacher and I'm this and I'm that. It's like, okay, well, I may not be a teacher, but I have lived a little longer than you and I read history a little differently. It was taught to me differently. So what do you say? You try to prove me wrong and I'll try to prove you wrong. Let's see who wins. And they'll be like, well, you're the parent. You're going to say I'm wrong no matter what. No. No. I'm going into this like open-minded. You bring me information that proves that you are right about this situation, I will consider it. You have to be equally open-minded to my information. Are you open-minded? Remember, they've been taught they have to be so open-minded. They're not really. They just show them one side of things. But to say, are you willing to hear things that might challenge what you believe? And if they go, no, I'm not willing because you're an idiot. Be like, all right, well, we're going to just keep having this conversation until you don't graduate from high school, because in order for you to be a student at all, in order for you to qualify as a student of anything, homeschool or any other school, you can't say at the ripe old age of whatever you are, I know everything and there's nothing new you can show me that I need to look at. Mom, dad, that you're not even a student. I guess you're done. I guess you're done. You don't need a high school diploma. So as soon as you're legally able to work, you're getting a job. How does that work out for you? Probably they'll be like, yeah, I think I'll go with the student way. Okay. Glad we see it eye to eye, because those are your options. If you know what, you know more than I do. You know you're right. Your teacher told you all this stuff. There's nothing more you need to know. And then they might even argue with you. I need to know more math, or I need this, and I need a high school diploma. It's like, why? Why do you need one? For what? You know the world's a terrible place. You know that adults are idiots. You know that everything that came before was bad. You know that the world's going to end in 12 years because of climate change. You know this, you know that, you know all these things. Like, what more can I possibly tell you? I'm telling you all of that is wrong. Every single thing you just said is false. I'm prepared to show you a world that is actually way cooler than that, where there's a lot of good things going on, where a lot of good things have happened, where things weren't as bad and aren't as bad as you think they are, where it's full of opportunity and optimism and great things. And I can show you that if you'd like to see it, and like to see why you should take an education for yourself so that you can go out and take a big bite out of life and enjoy your life and have a happy life. Or you can look forward to a lifetime of violent protesting and being arrested and basically having no job. What would you like? Pick one. I mean, I hate to be so sarcastic, but that's obviously in the worst case scenario. And now we get to the part where you might be saying, well, where does this cut off, Deb? Like, at what age? I mean, if I pull my kid out and they're 16, I hate to say it, if your kid's already a junior in high school, you might just have to leave them there. Unless they're itching to get out. Like, if they're telling you, I want to leave, I'm not learning anything. But I don't think it's ever too late. I'm just telling you, now you've got a problem. They can drive. They have access probably to a phone that you cannot take away. Maybe they have a job, so they'll get themselves their own phone, a flip phone or subscription phone, whatever. Once they get to 16, and they now can be very easily walk out your door, and there's not a lot you can do. Now, the police will still help you and bring them back because they're still a minor child, but that is where their help will stop. You're still responsible for them, so you kind of have to house them unless they literally run away. You don't want them to do that. You don't want them falling in with bad crowds. You don't want them moving in with their teachers. You don't want to alienate your kid. So everything I'm recommending to you is probably good through middle school, maybe freshman year. You start getting past that sophomore year or junior, you'd be the judge. But I would caution you and say, once you get to that point, now the project you're working on by pulling them out of school is rebuilding your relationship, keeping your relationship out of harm's way of the school. And you'd have to kind of bill it that way. So if you're going to be working full time and you think, like, I'm pulling them out of school, but then I'm working full time, that's probably not going to work. They'll just go back and see their friends and spend their day playing video games. There's nothing you can do about it. If you're dealing with a really recalcitrant kid who's like, why are you doing this to me? You're ruining my life. There's probably not a lot to be gained. I hate to say that. I really, really do. Best to leave them there. Try to rebuild your relationship. Spend more time with them. Have family dinner every single night. Ask them about what they're learning. Poke holes in what they're learning. Ask all these questions, but leave them in the school. Make sure they're equipped to keep themselves physically safe. Ask them questions about that. Make sure there's constant open dialogue. Know who their friends are. Know where they're going. If you pay for the phone, exercise as much control as you feel comfortable exercising, but do it. Don't just be like, well, I can't. Try to do as much as you can. Don't just let them have the run of the car either, for obvious reasons. Make them earn that. So create opportunities for them to earn and keep your relationship one of, loving authority in their lives, where they trust you and they earn your trust. But you're probably going to have to leave them in the school. Explain to them as best you can without alienating them why you're frustrated and want to protect them. But always from a standpoint of it's for them, it's for their good. That you want to, really understand where they're coming from and ask them if they understand different things about where you're coming from, and try to make it a dialogue. Try to listen. Because anything other than that, you're just going to drive a wedge, and it will be bad because they're already being told that you're an abuser. So you don't want to do that. But if they're willing, if they're like, this is for the birds, I'm not learning anything, I don't want to leave my friends, but this is crazy, or I'm getting bullied or whatever, congrats, that's good. Then you have some room. And they still might say, I don't want to work because I know everything. I just don't like how everybody's violent, or I don't like how they hate white people, or I don't like this or that. And you can say, okay, but they might still believe in global warming, for example, so you have to find out what their beliefs are. Now, for the littler kids, there may still be some beliefs that you have to challenge, but you can probably challenge them by just putting material in front of them that is not going to echo what they've already learned, and they will probably quickly throw out the old stuff. So you may not even have to bring it up as an argument. It's more for kids, like I said, above 6th through 8th grade. where it's going to be a problem. And it really starts, the rubber starts to meet the road in 6th grade with all of this nonsense. They're starting as early as kindergarten, but it's bad. It's really bad in middle school. And then by high school, the die is cast pretty much. Another thing you can do once they're in high school, if you decide to leave them there, like there's no pulling them out, but you still are treating them like they're in a refugee camp as it is. You just can't, you have no way to rehome them or something, is you can get more involved in what's going on in the school, so they see you. And again, this is dicey depending where you are. They see you caring about it. They see you trying to do something about what you don't like, not just fighting it with them, because they don't have any control over what's going on in the school. So going to them isn't going to really help. You have to position yourself as their ally against crazy ideas of the school. You have to keep tying it to the real world and reality. It's like, yes, I'm doing this because I want you to be successful in life. I want you to be able to go out and do all the things you want to do. Keep them connected to what that is, by the way. Talk to them as often as you can about what do you think you want to do after high school. And don't automatically defer to college, please. College right now is a scam. Encourage them to examine other opportunities, entrepreneurship, trades, just taking a year off and figuring it out. There are things you should go to college for, like you want to be a doctor or so on, but what kind of doctor? Do they want to practice medicine in this world of medicine? Make sure they understand what that means. So, connect with them. These teenagers, the teachers are trying to be that parental figure, and they may gravitate towards them because they want to feel independent and differentiate. You're going to have to find a way to connect with your teenagers where they see you as that trusted person, and they see the teacher as the creepy effer who's trying to get between you. And if you're fortunate enough to already have that relationship, yay, congrats, mom and dad. If you don't, get busy. Work on it as best you can. Tell the kid, honestly, I really apologize that we have kind of been like ships passing in the night, your schedule, my schedule, whatever, but I really want to spend more time with you. I want to find out, I want to learn more about you and figure out what is important to you. And you might hear some crap you don't want to hear. Oh, really? You do? Oh, well, what's really important to me is stopping global warming that you people have done. Who knows what you're going to hear? Who knows? And just be like, all right, yeah, I want to hear about that. Doesn't mean you want to agree with it. You want to hear about it. And then as they're talking, be like, well, that's interesting. What about this? They don't have an answer to it. Well, what about that? They don't have an answer to it. It's like, yeah, see, I have some doubts about this whole thing. I'm interested in what you're interested in. I don't know that I agree. And as long as you do it respectfully like that, you never know. Your kid might be like, what do you mean you disagree? It's like, well, I disagree. Let me show you. And show them. Show them resources. Show them, Alex GPT. It's an app from Alex Epstein about fossil fuels, for example. Look something up on the internet and be like, so there's this. They might not have ever seen it. Use your area of expertise, whatever it is, and teach them something about that. But your number one goal with these kids, whether they're in or out of the school, is reacquaint them with the concept of objective reality existing and pretty much not being something you can will away or wish away or, imagine away or reimagine away or decolonize away or any of that. It's here to stay. And as I said, I'm going to try to put something together that makes a list of these bad ideas and a list of these notions that they might have with some suggestions of things you can do to constructively deprogram your child and strengthen your relationship while you're at it. I'm not a parenting expert, so I may have to find someone to partner with to help me with the how. I just kind of know the what, and we'll see. Maybe it will become a book. It's certainly an idea, but I just have to put it together. And in the meantime, since I carry all of that around up in here, and it's easier to go one-on-one with a specific child in mind, if this is something that sounds interesting to you. You're like, I've got a sixth grader and I want to get them the heck out, or bad things are happening, but what do I do? This is why I offer consulting. This is what it's for, is that you would spend time with me one-on-one and you would say, all right, this is my kid. This is what we're dealing with. These are things they've said to me. I could give you a questionnaire to go and have an initial conversation with them. And then you come back and we iterate it until the point where you feel like you can go with it on your own. And that I can do. That I can do right now without a book in my hand. So if that's something that's of interest to you, that is one of the benefits, one of the services that I offer. It is at a discounted rate, of course, for people who are annual members of this Discord, but it is something that I want to offer to you because I think there's nothing more important at this point than parents developing better relationships with their children, whether you pull them out or you leave them in. And for some of you, I acknowledge you're going to have to leave them where they are, because I don't want your relationship to suffer. And that is more important. They're going to need you. And you are going to need that reassurance of knowing that they are speaking to you and that you are speaking to them and that you know where they are and you know what's going on and that you can get between them and the very, very worst of ideas that could overtake them in their young adult years and cause them to do something really stupid, like sign on to a statement supporting Hamas, that could potentially impact the rest of their lives in terms of their ability to get a job, or just choosing to go to college that costs $80,000 a year that they'll be in debt for, only to come out and get a job doing something that will never enable them to pay the debts, et cetera, and so forth. So that is prevented by a good relationship. There's nothing that you could teach them in an academic subject, and there's nothing that they are going to learn in their school. It's going to protect them from that. Now, they may be, like I said, one of those kids who has the common sense that this doesn't even apply to them. But from what I've seen, this applies to the majority of public schools and public school kids. So I hope this is helpful. Like I said, I'm here, and the annual members have access to a personal chat with me, and then of course the discounted consulting rates. If that is of interest to you, happy to help. Hope you guys have a great day.